I was first introduced by Spirit to the concept of healing the power of the voice in 2017. And so it's my absolute pleasure and honour to welcome such an amazing teacher of this work to the show. So very much welcome, Jill.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So just because you are new to the show and possibly new to a lot of people who are tuning in, I just thought it'd be lovely if you just gave a brief explanation of how you first started working with healing with the voice and sound healing.
Goodness. Yes, it's my life story, really. I realized very early on that as a society we'd gone, the more developed our society became, the more silent we became. And this was when I started. Things have changed. And I realized that the professional musicians had hijacked sacred music. And so unless you could read music or to join a choir, when I started, you had to be able to sing in tune, you had to read music, you had to have an audition, and it was quite a palaver and very putting off for anybody else. Now, of course, there are community choirs all over. In fact, my as of 2 days ago, my daughter-in-law, that means my son got married 2 days ago. Her mother started a choir called the Getting Higher Choir, which is wonderful, in Vancouver, and had hundreds and hundreds of participants. So this has all changed since I started. But when I started, this was impossible, and I realized that we'd gone silent, and that we needed to reclaim our voices. And so when I started this, I really thought, well, what can I teach? What would be the most fundamental kind of thing to chant? Because if we sing songs, we're the point about chanting for me is that you can only chant in the present. And for the most important, the very sort of heart and core of every spiritual tradition is how do we become present. And normally what happens is we see, we taste, we touch, we smell. It signals, it reminds us of something we haven't done. So regrets of the past and therefore anticipatory dreads of the future, because we have to do in the future what we didn't do in the past. And so we're thrust into a kind of timeline excluding us from the present. And so that's our normal modality. And so for me, the question was, how do I induct a kind of presence? How can I use the voice to, so you can only chant in the present, but you can chant in the present and think about something else. So that's no good either. So the only way you can actually remain present is if you're chanting in the present and you're listening to yourself chanting while you're chanting. So you create a circuit of attention. And this is the key. So and if we're chanting words, then we're thinking again, and that's the problem to start with, is how to use sound so we don't think. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted a form of chanting which didn't involve words, because the other thing about words is that you can sing the wrong song. If you're singing a national anthem, you're fine if you're one side of the border, but if you cross the border, you're singing the wrong song. So I came across this form of chanting in Central Asia, where you chant on a single note and you amplify the inner sounds through changing the shape of your resonant cavity. So you produce what are called overtones, which are high flute-like tones floating above the note you're singing, which is called the fundamental. And it sounds like what we think of, what we call the music of the spheres. It sounds completely celestial and extraordinary. And the thing about this particular form of chanting is that in Western music, in the 17th century, with the popularity of keyboard instruments, there was this problem called the tuning problem. Because traditionally you tuned an instrument by going from one note to a note 5 notes above that. It's called a fifth. Mm-hmm. And then from that note to its fifth, that note to its fifth, and it's a cycle of fifths. And you come back, or should come back, to an octave above where you started, but you don't. You overlap by a little interval, a quarter of a semitone, and this has a name. It's called a Pythagorean comma. And so when people were trying to tune musics with fixed tuning, like you do with keyboards, you have these fixed strings and so on, this was impossible. So they were thinking of all kinds of ways. How can we tune music now, so it's in tune? And so what was agreed on was what I call a Faustian bargain. If you make all our music out of tune, we can make all music now since Bach. So all music since Bach has been out of tune. So what they did is they took this little interval, put it inside the octave, stretching two notes or squashing two other notes. So in general, we don't know this. Most people don't know it. Even musicians barely know it. But when you make music now, it's just very slightly out of tune. And so when you do the kind of chanting that I'm talking about, it can only be in tune because you're only making one note. And the other notes that you hear come about spontaneously through resonance. And so these can only be in tune. And that means that you're internally coherent. It means that all your inner geometry is activated in a way that when you hear music or sing with instruments, it's not. So this is a very profound form of healing, because we can only be sound in mind and body if we're truly in tune. So then I found this form of chanting through the Tibetan tradition, which I was studying with, but also through the Mongolian tradition and the tradition of Tuva from Central Asia. But then I was working in Germany in 71 to 74 with a German composer, Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, and he had composed a piece for 6 singers using this form of chanting, a kind of very simple form of vocal harmonics. And so I got it through the Western art music tradition, and I got it through this very archaic Tibetan tradition, Central Asian tradition. And so this is one of the things that I teach, because mostly people who can't sing can't do it, and nor can famous divas, famous singers can't do it either. So it means you can have in one room people who say they've been told to stand at the back and mouth it, and people who are famous opera singers, and they neither of them can do it. And there's no situation ever where you'd get such people together, because it doesn't happen. So with this you can, and because both are fascinated by it, and neither can do it. And so more can do it now than when I started, but even so that's I can demonstrate this if you like.
That would be absolutely fabulous.
So I'll do it now, but I've also got a recording of a group doing it together, which is amazing. So I'll just do it now. So that's me doing it alone. Now I will play you a group doing it together, and this is the real magic. A little excerpt.
Wow, that was amazing. There's such power. You can feel the vibration coming through from it. You can physically feel it in your body, just even listening to it. So I can only imagine how powerful it is to actually allow that resonance, that vibration to flow throughout your own form.
It's amazing, and not so you're really tuning your whole inner geometry, because it's the right relationship, but also when you do that together with a group, sound creates form, you know, and sound dissolves form. We all know the story that if you take a wine glass, this is not a wine glass, but, and you wind a wet finger around it, the wine glass will sing a note, and that's the note that you can direct back at the glass to break it. So the sound of a thing is the key to its own dissolution. So sound, every form has its own sound, and it's a sound which dissolves the form. So sound has this creative, very fundamental creative quality, and also it can dissolve sound, so form. So what it means is when you're chanting together in a group, you're dissolving the boundaries between the other members of the group, and so it's a way that you can sustain a group together in the most magical way.
Absolutely, absolutely. One thing that I find really interesting, and I think you touched upon it when you were speaking in your brief kind of explanation of how you got into the work. My journey has been to, first of all, to own the power that's in the vibrational frequency of my name, and realizing that when I shortened my name, I was denying an aspect of myself. And that took me on a journey that then brought me to the power of your voice. And again, the realization that we do silence ourselves. The amount of people that I see with issues with their throat chakra, and I've had issues with my throat chakra, and it's like completely closed or constricted, and actually stopping you from speaking your truth. Because when you try to speak your truth, I find that, you know, my voice would break, and it would feel difficult in itself just to express myself. So I'm imagining that if we could get in tune with our frequency, our divine harmonic that's within us, that would resolve those kind of blockages that we have within ourselves. Is that right?
Well, yes, I mean, in a sense, we all have our own sound. I mean, you know, in Indian music, you sing all kind of possible sounds, you know, forever before you actually start singing, you know, and then really find your own sort of ground note. And so it's difficult to find in a group because the group has its own note too. But when you're chanting together like this, you know, we lose all inhibitions about sound because, you know, we're not trying to perform. It's a group. It's a group event, and also not only that, but the point is not to, you know, the point is to be present. You know, it's a spiritual practice, and so that's the absolute core of the, you know, the because, you know, traditionally people sang to remain living. You know, people would praise God. You know, oh great, you know, please look after me. Well, first of all, praising, you know, good manners, saying how wonderful, how great, and then please help me, and, you know, help bring rain for the crops and help my children, blah, blah, blah. And then on a more sophisticated level, participation. So I call these the 3 Ps: praise, petition, and participation. And so praising the other and asking favors of the other, and then becoming one with the other, overcoming separation. And so you know, chant has been fundamental into all spiritual paths since ever.
And somebody's just typed a question, is this type of overtone singing used for healing? And I know one of your aspects of the topic is the healing voice. Is that in relation to the healing voice as becoming into oneness with ourselves, or is it about actually physical healing of ourselves?
It's healing in every way, you know. It's healing, becoming integrated with ourselves. It's healing. Actually, you can manipulate the sound around the body, either of your own or somebody else's, to heal it. You're inducting order into the system. You know, it's very interesting. The word for enlightenment. You know, people talk about diamond body, for example. You know, the structure of the diamond is like you know, it's the same as a lead pencil. The only difference between the carbon in a lead pencil and the carbon in a diamond is order. So diamond body is you know, so when people, if you stand next to somebody who's just come off a 3-year retreat, for example, and you're kind of emotionally normal, kind of chaotic, in other words, and you're standing next to somebody who's come off a 3-year retreat, all your kind of vibrations go. So you get a kind of order from them, because their whole system is ordered because of their practice. So an induction of order is very much part of healing, bringing order into the system, order into the emotions, order into the physical body, and activating the vibration. We're vibratory, we're the regularity in the repetition of the movement. That's what creates us. And if we don't make sounds, then we're kind of we're dead, really. We have to keep this vibratory activity going, and the only way we can consciously do that is by using our voices. So that's healing too. And then so you can use it literally for healing, just emotional healing through keeping the flow going and the vibrations going, and also the most important part of healing, which is being ultimately enlightened, but if not enlightened, then present at least. So and also this induction of order through the amplification of the subtle geometry, making our geometry audible. So there is no way. So every way this is healing. Every way that I can think of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the interesting things for me is that over the last year, I would probably say I've been drawn every now, it will just come through me to do a tone. Yeah. And what was interesting when you did the overtone and when you played the recording as well, and I have listened to other talks that you've done and been aware of the work that you do, but it's like I actually did hit those notes, but I thought that they were wrong. Yeah, because of that teaching, that it's like, you're supposed to be hitting this pitch and it's not supposed to waver, and it's yeah, so I thought that was amusing to myself as I was listening to you doing it, going, oh my goodness, that's what that's what my body did. The other thing that comes through is the importance of breath with this overtoning, with this chanting, and one of the things again that I found is my breathing. I mean, you can hold a note unbelievably. My breathing runs out very, very quickly. With practice, does that improve?
Yes. I mean, and if you do any kind of yoga, the first thing they teach you is how to extend your breath. There are all kinds of exercises for lengthening your breathing, because your breathing is linked to the activity of your mind. So if you have a high agitated breathing, your mind will be agitated. So the first thing that you do in any kind of meditation, any kind of yoga, is to slow down your breath. So you extend the out breath first of all, and that's the first thing you do, and then so you can differentiate between out breath, held out, in breath, held in, and the last one you lengthen is the held in. So held out, so breathing out, holding it out, breathing it in, holding full. So this is a fourfold breath, and there are all kinds of ways of counting the breath. But actually, one of the things about the overtone chanting that I demonstrated is that it lengthens your breath, because you can only do it with a long breath, and you get a long breath doing it. So it's a wonderful sort of loop there. You actually get the long breath you need by doing the thing that you need the long breath for.
Excellent. Well, that sounds perfect. Now, I know the other part of the topic was about healing the family ancestors and kind of the inherent wounds that we kind of energetically inherit through our ancestral lineage. So I just thought, I'm aware of the time, and I know we want to take some questions from the audience. If you wanted to kind of share more about that in terms of how you work with healing the ancestral lines.
Well, this is a very big part of my work, and it started because I started doing these ceremonies, generic ceremonies to honor the ancestors, and then with people, and then I began to find that miraculous things started happening, and so then I developed it into this form of family constellations. So what it's really about is, it's quite extraordinary, this. Firstly, talking therapy, most of our issues are really deep in the unconscious, and we have no access to them through speaking, because speaking is on the rational level of the rational, and these things are way deep. So this form of working drills way down into the unconscious. So it's based on the idea of the family and ancestors being a field. which is a bit like a soul in a way. And whenever anything going back generations, or in any generation, and you can know this person or not know they exist, you can know they exist but not know what happened to them, you can not know they exist and not know what happened to them, but anything which is a kind of interruption in their life. So any kind of early death, suicide, mental illness, incarceration, adoption, addiction, giving children up for adoption, miscarriages, mental illness, injustices, dodgy dealing, physical problems, anything, or any kind of transgressions of what's considered appropriate at the time societally, anything of this kind causes a kind of trauma in the field, and that trauma has a kind of conservatism. It carries on down through the family transgenerationally, and it visits itself on whoever's available at the time. And this person may not know what happened, or that person existed, but they find themselves excluding themselves from the system because this interruption creates a kind of unfinished business. So, and this is what anybody who's around, at the moment will find, that they have this kind of unfinished business in relation to their ancestors or predecessors. And what that means is, in a way, it's like the blessing and the curse. It's the curse because they suffer some form of exclusion, but it's the blessing because they're the one that can heal it, and not only heal it for themselves, but they heal it from the previous generation. So you're working in the present to heal the past, but also you stop it going on to the future. So you can stop it being inherited by your children, your descendants, direct or indirect. So we have a kind of responsibility to do this. And what's so interesting about this work is that it's now finally being caught up with by science. They're always sort of a little bit late. And the hot science in the life sciences is called epigenetics. Well, in the early 70s, I did a research fellowship in King's College Biophysics Department with Maurice Wilkins, who was one of the 3 men who got the Nobel Prize for discovering DNA. And in those days, everything was considered to be inherited by the DNA, but now people are realizing. So, for example, any victims of racial injustice or traumas, like the Holocaust, or the famine in Holland after the war, or the displacement of Finns during the war to Sweden, or the Irish famine, all these kind of racial traumas, the descendants of these traumas suffer a very high proportion of mental illness or even chemical changes. And so there's a lot of work now. There's also a very interesting experiment done in Atlanta, Georgia, a few years ago with mice. So it's called The Inheritance of Fear. And the mice they smelled some very innocent smell called acetone phenone. They'd never smelled it before. It was like flowers. And at the same time, they were given an electric shock, I'm sorry to say, but they were. And they were bred in vitro so that they wouldn't know their children mice. Or the grandchildren mice. And what they discovered was that the children mice and the grandchildren mice were terrified of the smell. So they had inherited this fear from their ancestors. So this is an extraordinary. So in other words, we inherit things that come down through our ancestors, through our family members, and we have a responsibility to heal them. And this is amazing. I mean, it has all kinds of implications. If you have a family that's writ large, for example, where somebody's created a dynasty, very often, if they've become very wealthy, say, then very often in families that create wealth, people suffer in the making, on behalf of the person who has the wealth. They often suffer, so any building constructions, people die, people fall away. In the purveying of alcohol, people get drunk and so on. And very often the descendants of these people suffer in the way that these people who were suffering at the time suffered. And this is the same with slavery or all these things. You can see, or any kind of racial situation. So you can see that these things go down through the family. But it's not just these extreme cases. It's we all have this in these issues. And the effect of doing this work is dramatic. Sometimes people will come back the next day and say, I was one person came back the next day after doing it one day of a weekend and said, you're not going to believe this, but I was staying with my mother and she has 5 brothers and sisters, and they've been not speaking for 26 years. these 5 brothers and sisters, while we were working, they all telephoned her. So it's bringing in the outliers, all these people that we've banished to outer darkness because they abused us, or you have to bring them back. It's no good having them lurking in the sidelines, sort of ill-wishing us. It's not until you bring order, until you honor these people, and they can come back into the system, take their rightful place, and then look kindly on the living, and really help the living to remain alive. That's the whole point, really, that if these people are integrated, and we say this in the armistice, we say, we will remember you. So we know that the dead need to be remembered. This is a societal ceremony that we do in the armistice. So it's very, very important to do that, and the work is extraordinary. And what I thought the one aspect of my work that I wouldn't be able to do online would be that, and I found this amazing way of doing it online, and I've now done 4 sessions, and it's quite miraculous. And I work ceremonially, I work with chant, and I work with sort of ritual, and I found a way of incorporating that into the work. And I mean, the sessions have been quite dramatic and amazing, and so I'm going to be doing another of those. And if anybody of your group wants to join me, I think the next one, it's not yet on my website, but it's going to be December 11th, 12th, and 13th.
Oh wow, it's my birthday.
Oh, and then I have a healing voice workshop on the 7th and 8th of November. So you can either call me up, go to my website, healingvoice.com, and on the home page you'll see the number to call me, and you can just call me, or you can still book with Eventbrite for the family, for the healing voice one, the family one. The new dates are not up yet, but you can call me and I can book you in. And everybody has a responsibility to do it. It's absolutely astonishing.
So with the family constellations and the healing the ancestors work, is that done in like a small group affair? Because I would imagine it's quite an intimate process.
As well, I mean, when I did them in real life, the groups were about 21 or 2, and I'd work with everybody. Online, the groups are bigger, and I can't work with everybody because we don't have the same. I would work from 9 in the morning till almost 1 or 2 in the morning. Insane, just one after the other but online we don't have the same sort of stamina online, so so I work with less people, but somehow the resonance is amongst the group. If you represent the work happens that you choose other people to represent as naive representatives of your family, and that's the other miraculous thing, is that when you become somebody else's mother, they say, you're my mother Joan or something, and you become that person. It's extraordinary. You feel like that person. So the other thing about the work is when you're representing, you learn to trust your deepest sense of knowing, which I don't teach. We just get it, it's just, and so it's a profound transmission of understanding and knowing as well. And also healing, because when we're neither working nor representing, we're part of the healing group, and that's extraordinary as well. So every part of it is utterly magical.
I would imagine it's very much like some of the questions that come up that I'm guided to ask. It doesn't matter if it was your question or not, the information, the energy that is given within the transmission of the answer meets so many people's needs. So I would imagine that would be the same kind of thing in holding space for others.
Definitely. Yeah. That's one of the magics of it. Yeah.
Marina is just asking, what do we mean by armistice? It's on the 11th of the 11th for recognizing the end of the First World War. It's something that we say we will remember them on armistice. It's all of those people who were lost during the First World War, but then now the Second World War, and any other conflict that's happened in between.
We say we will remember you, which is so interesting. The way is this. I'm not very great fan of Disney, but he did a film called Coco, which I highly recommend people watch, because this has very much a similar thing, about remembering the ancestors, having photographs. One thing that I recommend to people is having a family altar, which, in the Far East, when I went in Japan in '83 teaching, everybody had a family altar. It was very patriarchal. It was the last male ancestor and so on. But I have a family altar with both sides, and it's a wonderful thing because you can activate it and honor your ancestors. Very important to honor your ancestors on a regular basis.
Absolutely. One thing that I love that you've kind of got in the description of the family constellations work on your website is making your ancestors your allies, which, because I work shamanically as well, it's like, you know, when we light the candle and we call in the flame and we call in the ancestors, and we're the first ones around the fire, and then everybody who's come before us stands behind us in those rings around the fire. And it's a really beautiful thing to bring those energies in and acknowledge them. And it's really important work to work with the ancestors, definitely. So I'm just wondering if anybody in the audience would like to raise their hand and ask a question directly, or write in the question and answers. So we are able to take questions direct. If anybody has a question that they want to ask, don't be shy. Feel free to raise your hand or pop it in the Q&A. One person. Bonnie. Hi, Bonnie. Are you able?
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so thank you for this opportunity. I'm doing ancestral clearing at the minute. I just wondered, how long does it actually take to clear ancestral stuff? Because I've been doing this for a year, and
It's an ongoing thing. I mean, you know, honoring the ancestors is something, it's like housework. You can do it every day. And I mean, if you think about how many hundreds and thousands of ancestors we have, you know, we can go on forever. But what I find is when I do this work with people quite often, you know, when I was doing it in real life, there were people who would come back every time. Some people would come back regularly, and the same when I'm doing it online. So because every time you work, something else comes up, and you clear that, and then when that's clear, then you can work that, and then when you do that, you can work that. So there's a kind of natural hierarchy of issues which comes up, and you can't do everything at once, because then you dilute the issues. So you have to with the family work, you what comes up is unexpected, and you can't control it, and it's not necessarily what you expect, but it's what needs to be worked on first, and so on, and you work through things as they come up. So it's, you know, it's an ongoing process.
okay. Is it so if I'm working on my own ancestors and then I see that my partner has their own, which I would say were ancestral issues, is it possible to clear their stuff as well?
Well, it's tricky. When I'm doing constellations, I either work with the birth family, or I work with the family of origin. And so if I work with the family of origin, then the naive representatives are chosen by the person working to be their mother, father, and siblings. And then I bring people in as the work unfolds. If I'm working with a current family, for example, if you have a partner or partners and children, so if you have children together, then you can work with your partner. But if you don't have children together, it's a little more difficult, really, because it's something you can do. You really have to do for yourself, unless you share children together. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Jill.
You're welcome. Come and work with me.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to go to a question that's been written in the chat. Far M, how do you work with people who do not know their parents, and they therefore consequently have no knowledge of their ancestors whatsoever?
Oh, well, I do all the time. You know, I work with people who are adopted, and or people who have no information. And somehow or other, when we work, what needs to be worked with comes up. So it doesn't really matter. you know, some people, how much people know about their families varies enormously. But even if you have a family tree going back to the 14th century and you know a lot of, and there are books about your family, you know, that's not very far back really in the scheme of things. So it doesn't really matter, you know, even if you know very little, there's always stuff to work on, and it emerges as we work. Yeah.
And then somebody who is also on a similar theme, Kate is saying that she's adopted and is very aware of her own feelings of exclusion from the birth family and the adopted family. But apart from working with you with the family constellations, can she use chanting at home? And if so, how could she do that?
Well, I mean, with adoptive families, one of the things that I tend to do is to have representatives for the birth parents, as well as representatives for the adoptive families, parents and carers. And so what is terribly important is for them to honour each other. So for the adopting parents, it's really important to honour the birth parents because they produced and gave them the child, directly or indirectly. And for the birth parents, it's really important to honour the people who brought their child up because they brought their child up. So, you know, I would recommend coming and working with me, but if you can't, then I would recommend doing a little ceremony for yourself where you see them, each of them, you know, the four people, if you were adopted by two people, that is, of course, honouring each other and thanking each other for their respective roles in your life. Very important.
It seemed, I mean, I don't know, something's just come to me. I've done some 5 Shields work with White Eagle, and it feels like where we did some work with the adult male, the adult female, the child male and the child female. It's kind of like you could have like a four-way seated kind of arrangement, and you could have the conversations, maybe even sitting in one chair and being that individual and having that conversation, just seeing what came through. I mean, I don't know, that's just what's come through me just now.
Yeah, I mean, you can gestaltify it. You can do a gestalt version of it by taking different roles. I have to say it's easier to do with another person. I mean, one of the things about when I'm guiding this, I have a way of seeing connections. I mean, that's in my gift somehow or other. So when people say a little bit about what happened, I mean, the only things I ask people are events of interruption. I'm not interested in whether you were loved or not loved, or it's not. And also, there's no judgment in this work, so it doesn't matter if your ancestors killed somebody or abused somebody. It's not about judgment. It's working with what is. But I you know, it's about working with the family through time, which we never normally do because we have this little window, loved or not, more or less than our siblings. But this is working through time. So you see the whole family through time, and you see the family through space because you're seeing it through the eyes of multiple members of the family. Again, we never have an opportunity to do that. And I'm able to make the connections because, you know, I see them. And so sometimes it's harder to do it yourself. You know, you need an outside person sort of seeing what's going on to guide it. So I would say it's better to do it with you know, another person if you can, but you can, or you can write names on bits of paper and move them around and so on. But I would, yeah. So I mean, that kind of thing you can also do, yeah.
Yeah. I've got a similar question from 2 different people. One is anonymous and the other is a lady called Joan. So the anonymous person is basically saying, I was once told the reason that I chose to come at this time was to break alcoholism in the ancestral line. Does this mean that her children wouldn't have a problem with the addiction if she cleared it from an ancestral perspective?
Yes, that's the idea. I mean, you know, if we take up our responsibility and deal with something which comes down the line, alcoholism is a big one, and in many cases, especially through the men. I get it, for example, funnily enough, I get a lot of people from Ireland where alcoholism is a major problem. And so if we work on this, then it shouldn't go on. That's the whole point. I mean, of doing this work is we stop these things going on down to the next generation. That's the whole point. I mean, they stop it for us, they stop it for our children, and so on. So definitely that's in our gift. That's why, I mean, there are some people who feel it their responsibility to heal the family, and you know, for us it's essential to do that. Yeah.
And Shelley's put, this is the first exposure that she's had to your work, and she's curious to know if when we just set an intention to do ancestral healing work, do the things that need healing reveal themselves, as opposed to a person needing to be aware of any specific details? Because I know you've kind of said, I need to know the event, but if they didn't know their ancestors, you've also said that whole situation and relationship can be healed. So I'm presuming you wouldn't necessarily need to know the specifics.
No, I mean, usually people know a little bit about the events in their parents' life. I mean, even not always, but sometimes, and that's usually enough to get us going. And even if you know nothing, it's fine. Things come up. You know, it's astonishing. You needn't worry about not knowing anything. That what needs to be worked on emerges miraculously.
And another anonymous attendee has written, how do you differentiate honouring the essential nature of the ancestor rather than the flawed personality?
I don't. So, for example, if somebody's done some heinous act, murdered somebody, for example, well, let's say, for example, one of the things that's very big and very important is forgiveness. But forgiveness is really hard to work with, and I discourage it for the following reason. If I say to you, you know, you've murdered my whatever, you murdered my mother, I forgive you. What I'm doing is I'm putting myself up high on a pedestal, and I'm looking at you down there. You poor little worm, I forgive you. So, so in a way, it's very hard to forgive without putting yourself above the person you're forgiving. So what I would do in that case would be to elevate the person above you, so and honor them. So let's say you murdered my mother, and I honor you, and I don't distinguish whether I'm honoring you as the murderer or you as your essential being, which, you know, maybe is flawless, who knows. It's just honoring. I honor you. It's not necessary to make that distinction between the essential being and their actions, because in this moment there's no division really, and it's not no judgment, as I said. So they're not being judged for what they did and seen as something in spite of what they did. It's a whole package. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I suppose for me, what's come to my mind is that from a soul perspective, you know, we kind of have this idea that we came in with soul contracts and soul agreements to be the victim or the perpetrator, to experience certain things, and therefore there is no forgiveness, because there's nothing to blame, because everything was perfect. Everything from a soul expression of a journey throughout the experience was as it was meant to be. And I know from my perspective, looking back on the issues and events that have happened in my life, I feel blessed for having experienced them, because I've been able to kind of take the gifts and the blessings from each of them. Therefore, there is nothing to forgive, because it was perfect on my journey, as it were.
Yes, in theory. In theory, but the experience isn't always like that, you know. And so you know, if somebody's done you some terrible injustice and let's say abused you as a child, or the temptation is to, you know, banish that person, cut the ties with them, seize strings and cut them, and you know, banish them and have nothing to do with them and never speak to them again. But what you do is you then blame yourself. You feel guilty for having done that. You blame yourself, and they're still there, like this sort of ogre. But if you allow them, if you honor them, if you honor the perpetrator, if you bring them back into the system, because everybody has a place, and they have their rightful place, and you honor them with love, then only then can they become a force for the good and really do what ancestors are supposed to do, which is to keep the living alive. That's their job description.
Z, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, has said that they attended one of your ancestral workshops in the States in 2015, and can attest that it's a very powerful experience watching other participants finding release from ancestral issues. The stories were all very powerful, and they found some balance with the issues with their older sister who had recently passed. Also, they attended the chanting workshop and still use this technique to balance themselves when the world seems off kilter. I was going to ask, actually, I mean, are there particular tones that you would do, or do you just allow whatever tone wants to come through? I mean, that's what I've done naturally. I've just found tones coming through naturally, but I was just thinking, there is that understanding of, you know, each one of the chakras has a different tone. So would you tone those chakras and see where, you know, the overtone comes in to bring everything into alignment, or do you just kind of go with the flow?
Well, if I'm working with different chakras, then I would use vowels rather than notes, because notes brings in the whole concept of different cultural scales, which is a thorny question, and you know, and the arbitrariness of starting on a particular note, and the arbitrariness of the intervals, which is a particular cultural accretion, if you like. So whereas if you do it all on one note and you change the vowels, you're changing the harmonics, which is going to the kind of fundamental nature of sound and its own geometry, which is beyond any cultural norms, and it's much more profound. And if you do the vowels, we are amplifying the harmonic anyway. You don't normally quite hear the note that you're amplifying, but you still are. That's what a vowel is. So rather than work with particular notes, which is much trickier, really, I tend to work with the harmonics, or in this case, the vowels. Yeah.
Okay.
That's I'm glad those people worked with me and found it helpful.
Well, you can't get better feedback than that. Somebody who's worked directly with somebody and can attest to the power of the work. That's brilliant. And also the fact that, you know, something that they attended, well, you know, 5 years ago is still so powerful an experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow, you know, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, I mean the family work changes people's lives in immediately in dramatic ways, and the voice workshop provides us with the most extraordinary tools for balancing ourselves, especially in this mad situation we're in right now. You know, I mean, it's too ghastly, and so, you know, a lot of people are finding it very challenging indeed, and both these things give us tremendous gifts and tools to work with, both aspects, the sound and the family work. And we really need all we've got at the moment. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of the lockdown criterias have basically taken us away from those types of groups and gatherings that we would have shared voice, that we would have come together, whether it be a religious connection or otherwise. So yeah, so even more so, I think we've all been kind of silenced and kind of drawn inwards with the wounds that had then been brought to the surface because of the triggerings from the various different things that have been going on. So I think it's probably why I found myself actually being drawn just randomly to tone. It's kind of like I don't know, a bit of intuitive kind of self-balancing, self-centering thing that's been going on.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful tool.
Absolutely. We've still got a few minutes before we come to the hour, so if anybody has a question that they would like to put to Jill directly, this is a rare opportunity, I would say, so I would make the most of it. Absolutely. Oh, somebody's hand keeps popping up and going down again.
You can see everybody. I can't see anybody.
I can see under the participants, I can see when the hands go up and down. I was going to say, it's Karen. Yeah, I thought it was your hand keeps popping up. Do you actually want to speak, Karen? I'm going to put you on and you can say no if you don't want to speak. Hopefully, Karen, you're on.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, now, strangely enough, actually, I would like to speak about my throat chakra and voice block, even so this is taking a bit of courage. Yeah, I mean, I'm 57 going on 58, but even though I've been a community worker most of my life before I retired, I've always found it quite difficult to vocalize my views. Now, the main issue though is in confrontational situations. For example, I have a few issues with my sister, even though I love her deeply. And whenever I'm in a confrontational situation like that, where I feel somebody's attacking me, and it's happened quite a few times throughout my life, but you know, just every now and then, I just clam up. And I'm just wondering if I can get some advice, because I feel as though I'm quite strong in a lot of ways, but I just don't seem to be able to find the words, and I just can't get there. You know what I mean? If any advice would be very gratefully appreciated, please.
Okay, Karen. Well, one thing to do, and this would combine the two things you mentioned, would be to sit down with your sister and hum together. So you don't have to do anything. You don't have to sing words. You don't have to talk to her. Just look at her, sit in front of each other, and just hum together. And then maybe occasionally open your mouths and but carry on making sound. And or do that without her. I mean, you can either combine these issues by working with her, and it's a very amazing thing to tune together actually. And you can open your eyes or close them, but just sit opposite them and make sound together. And that's an amazingly, it's very moving actually. So you could do that, making sound, and that would and just, I mean, I have a CD which sometimes people buy in order to chant with it, which is, you know, you can sort of begin to learn the overtones with it. Those are both on my website. I have overtone chanting meditations and healing voice, both CDs are really helpful, because the thing about making sound is if you're trying to make sound and break into the silence, this is in music, it's called the attack, interestingly enough, it's much harder. Whereas if you have an ongoing sound that you can just tune in and out of, without, you know, having to break the silence, it's much easier. That's why group chant is so magical, because, you know, people are chanting all the time and you just come in and out, you breathe, you stop, you chant, you listen, you come in. You know, there isn't that hiatus of breaking the silence or being heard, because if you're doing it in a group you can't be heard. So, you know, you're not standing out alone, you know, you're not performing, you're not being judged, you're just part of the group sound. And if you can't do that with a group, then if you have a recording, then you can do it with a recording, and then it's so easy to overcome any inhibitions. And so that would be my advice, Karen.
Okay, that sounds really great. There is actually a healthy singing group in our area when the lockdown's not on. Do you think it would be beneficial as well to maybe, it's a breathing stroke singing group? Do you think that would maybe help me as well, please?
Yes. No, I mean, as soon as lockdown is over and we can sing together. I mean, funnily enough, singing is one of the things we can't do because, you know, we increase the air that we're expelling, and so that's especially hard for singers. But yes, definitely join a group. I mean, as soon as that's possible again, I would recommend it. And, you know, in the meantime, if you can join my online healing voice workshop, that's which is on the 7th and 8th of November on my healingvoice.com website. You can start off that way, you know, because who knows how long it'll be before we can actually chant together.
Well, sure. Thanks very much for all the advice. And I've just written down those dates. I'll look into it. And thanks a lot. You're very interesting. The both of you together there is fascinating.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I was just going to say, actually, as well, part of my shamanic training, I've done bee shamanism. And part of that is to actually hum the different tones that the bees make. And it is incredibly powerfully healing. I mean, we literally just sat and hummed while somebody was receiving the healing, and it's just potent. It really is potent.
Absolutely.
Humming, fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Shelley, who's got a hand up. Shelley, I'm allowing you to talk.
Hi, Louise. Hi, Jill.
Hi.
So and thank you for answering my previous questions, but I am curious now. I have 2 adult children and 2 natural grandchildren, and I'm curious to know if I do ancestral healing work, that will flow to them as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is amazing. I mean, when one person in a family works, the whole family benefits. I mean, in a dramatic way, because it is one field. It is a field. It's interlocking. And as soon as somebody brings light into the field by working, by bringing order into the field, everybody benefits, and especially your children and your grandchildren, without a doubt.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
So come and join my next online one, which I've just done one, but the next one is December 11th, 12th, 13th.
Yeah, of December. Right, fantastic. Thanks, Shelley. So we've got two questions in the question and answer box. One is, what is the complementary role of sacred listening?
Well, what I was saying earlier was, if you can only make sound in the present, but if you make sound and you're thinking about something else, then it's a relative benefit. It benefits all the sort of vibratory levels, but it doesn't help you become present, as it were. But if you listen at the same time to the sound that you're making, so mindfulness, for example, is a way of being mindful of everything you're doing. But if you're doing the thing you're mindful of, so if you're making the sound that you're hearing, so there's no separation between the doer, the doing, and the done to, so there's overcoming this separation. So if you're listening to the sound that you're making, creating this circuit of attention, then that's a kind of extraordinary form of listening, a really essential listening. You can also listen to sounds that other people are making, and really integrate with them. There are Tibetan practices where you might sit by a stream, for example, and listen to the shh. And if you listen it's like you're defocusing your ears, so you actually integrate with the sound itself. So this is a form of listening where you integrate with the sound that you're listening to, and this is even if you are not the maker of the sound. But that depends on your integrating with it. So you're not thinking about what it is that's making the sound. You're not sort of naming, judging, identifying. You're in a sort of mindset where your ears, your hearing, and the sound all become one. That's what I mean by integration. Then this is a very profound practice, and I highly recommend it.
That sounds like an absolutely beautiful way of connecting with nature as well, which I think at this moment in time is absolutely crucial and totally beneficial for us all to regain that kind of centered space within ourselves.
Definitely, yeah.
I'm going to take one more question, and it's in the Q&A. Evangelos, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Is there a particular healing technique or approach that you found most effective with processing ancestral trauma related to war and colonialism, imperialism? Is it better to do it on their own or with their family?
Well, I work with both. So, I mean, it definitely helps to have somebody, which is what I do, for example, work with you on that, because I can sort of see which way to guide it as it comes up in the present. I can't have preconceived ideas. That's the magic of this work. I can only, I dance with the revelation of novelty in the moment that it comes up and see where it needs to go. I mean, this is something very important to work. And funnily enough, the family constellation weekend I did, not the one just gone, but the previous one, the theme of war was a very big theme, and it came up for many, many people. And it's a very important issue to deal with. And so I highly recommend working with that. There was a second part to that question, I think, that I might have missed.
Oh, let me just try and find it again. Q&A.
I think I might have missed part of that question.
Whether or not it's better to do it on their own or to do it with the family.
Oh yes, that was the other part.
Yeah.
So when I'm doing this work, sometimes I'll just work with one member of the family, but sometimes many members of the family will come and do it with me. So in the last one I just did this weekend, I had a mother, a father, and a daughter. All three did it together. So you can either do the work on your own, or you can bring, or could have several members of the family doing it. And actually, you know, that's wonderful. It's even better to have other members of the family do it, because they then can see the fact that the family through your eyes, and you can see it through their eyes, and which is again completely astonishing. So I highly recommend that. But I would recommend, you know, for example, coming and doing it with me, because having another person see what's going on, it's just easier because you can see the connections. So whereas if you're right in it, it's harder. But otherwise, you know, you just go back and honor the two sides that killed each other, and you know, remember them all, or whatever. I mean, I don't know what happened, so it's hard for me to say. I mean, sometimes, you know, when in wartime, I've had many examples where, for obvious reasons, that their ancestors survived, otherwise they wouldn't be there. But all the people with them didn't, you know, in which case there's this thing called survivor guilt, which is, you know, the person who survives seeing all their friends die, is a terrible thing, and they feel tremendously guilty for surviving, and that's another thing we can deal with easily. Yeah, so there are many ramifications, both in war and colonialism. Colonialism is a very interesting one, because, you know, the countries colonized often take a revenge in a very shamanic way, because sometimes that's the only tools they have.
Absolutely. Wow. This has been such a wonderful conversation, Jill. I could talk to you about it for ages, but we have come up to the hour mark, and I'm aware that I have to get everything uploaded and sent out for people to enjoy on the replay. So is there anything that you feel we've not covered, that we've missed out, that you really wanted to share during this conversation before we bring it to a close?
Well, I mean, the other thing I do in real life is I do these big mandala ceremonies, but since I can't do them right now, I'm not sure it's worth talking about them. They're very magical, but I mean, you know, because for me, the work's really about community, sonorous community, and so as a result of the work I do, whether it's online or in real life, you know, the communities are created, and it's a wonderful thing, you know, and especially now we need them more than ever. So, you know, just come and work with me, and go to my website, healingvoice.com. There's massive information there. Healing Voice is one word. Email me, info@healingvoice.com. And just come and work with me online. I mean, I'm amazed how it works. And it means that wherever you are, you can work with me. You know, whereas people used to have to come and, I mean, I always had people from all over the world, but, you know, now we can do it from our own armchairs.
I think it's one of the amazing things about the kind of COVID-19 situation. It was obviously very traumatic in a lot of ways, but it has enabled so much work to kind of move online that people didn't think could move online. But you've obviously found that it works just as well on an online setting.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, Jocelyn's just said she logged on late. Notice the goddess behind Jill. Can she talk about the significance of the goddess?
Yes, this is Kuan Yin, if that's the one she means. I've got lots of them behind me, but that's Kuan Yin, who's Kuan She Yin. She's an Oriental. She's shared in China and many Far Eastern countries. And she's very interesting because she hears the cries of pain in the world, and always comes to help. And so in fact, when I'm doing the family work, she has a kind of implement which I was given when I was in Japan in 73 teaching, and I was taken to meet all these extraordinary people, and one of them was a mountain ascetic whose gift it was to know what people's role in life was by giving them the gifts of their trade, and he didn't know anything about them, and so you know, he'd bow and disappear behind a screen and come back and give a gift. And he brought me a sort of altar cloth one time, and a incense burner another time, and smelling incense another time, and then he brought me this a bigger one, but this implement which is called a rui, which is a magic wand, which is held by Kuan Yin because she gives people what they asked for, and so I put this on people's heads, and I have a miniature one for my avatars for the family work. But so she and her gift is really integrating people with the sound that they're making too. So sound is very important for her. So that's who she is, Kuan Yin.
Fabulous, fabulous. Right, everybody, I'm afraid that is all we have time for this evening. Thank you so much, Jill, for joining us. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure to have you share space with us and all your vast wisdom. I can't believe that you've been doing this work for probably as long as I've been living.
Embarrassing. I've been doing it a long time.
Absolutely, but I mean, I can't wait to work with Jill myself, and I'm really actually tempted. But with the family constellations being on my birthday, I'm not sure how my partner would feel.
Oh, that's the best thing to do on your birthday, because that's a sort of verticalization of the spirality of your being. Boom. That's the moment to do it.
Absolutely. I might just have to kind of alter my celebrations with my partner a little bit, or maybe just lie about the date.
It's only 5:30 onwards on the Friday, Saturday and Sunday, the family constellation. So you've got all day to celebrate, and then work.
Well, that I can probably swing that. I could probably swing that. All right then. So thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who has joined us live, and to all of those in the replay. I'm sure that you've received so much wisdom through this, but please check out Jill's website, which will be, well, it's on the details of the email that have gone out to you, and it will also be in the YouTube comments underneath this video, and also in the SoundCloud comments underneath the audio only. I get the audio only version out immediately after this call has finished, and the video is as long as it takes to upload on the UK internet system. So thanks to everybody, and I shall see you all again tomorrow for another live call. And tomorrow's call is with the beautiful Ellen Watts, and we're talking about cosmic ordering. So I can't wait for that conversation as well. So much love to everybody. Take care. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are in the world.
Thank you.
Bye.